What's up, friends? How's it going, YouTube? I'm back. You probably didn't even notice I was gone. And that kind of goes along the lines of what I wanted to talk about here. I've tried to start this video a couple times and had a couple interruptions, and I was just going to give up on it, but I decided, no, I'm going to stick with it. I've been a little bit frustrated lately, and as the last video I made about a week ago was about pain, and that pain has continued on through this past week. The interesting thing is that this being the month of 7/19 of the year 2019, I thought one of my favorite dates would be 7/19/19, and I thought, oh, I'll do a video on 7/19. And then on 7/17, I got two strikes against my channel for videos discussing kratom. So I had to wade through and delete all my kratom videos in hopes that YouTube isn't going to censor my channel or delete it over that again. But anyhow, as the week was up, I'm able to actually upload again, so I thought I would just make a video. So here I am. And it's probably a good thing that I wasn't making videos over the past week, because when you're in pain and you're not sleeping right, one of the hardest things to do is to keep your attitude straight. And I think I've done a pretty good job keeping myself in check, but I can only stand for a certain period of time, and then I've got to, do stretches or, lay over the couch or a certain way, and laying on my back is probably, or my side, are the most uncomfortable positions, so there's really no way to lay down. So, I woke up at 2:30 the other day, and didn't get back to sleep till like 6, and it's just been this kind of on and off schedule. But during that time, I've done a lot of thinking and a lot of research, and as I usually do when I'm kind of out like that. Over the past week, a couple of issues I wanted to talk about have come to light, and one of them in particular is the biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. That's the quote that I read. I'll read it again. The biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. And instantly, the quote was attributed to George Bernard Shaw. It doesn't matter. Somebody else said it was William White. For all I care, it could be David Lee Roth. Anyone else. It doesn't really matter who says these quotes, and usually when you try to attribute them to a person, it doesn't do the quote any justice anyway. So that just basically means that the idea that we think that we've communicated ourselves well, we think we've had a discussion with someone and got our point across, but really we're not communicating. We're not effective communicators as human beings. I mean, we do our best. We try to express what we can in words. There's kind of this illusion that if you learn enough words, you'll be able to talk with the big boys and express yourself. It doesn't work that way. In fact, some of the most boring people to converse with to me are the intellectual types who always have to use some cumbersome, overbearing language. In fact, a few days ago I was listening to Alan Watts, and he was talking about how he was at a party or something, and he was listening to these two guys in the corner, these intellectual philosophers, academic philosophers who were sitting there discussing these really, really, really deep life terms in such complicated and deep and cumbersome language that he said, in his mind he was thinking, you guys could just simplify that and say, yeah, man, life's crazy. Oh, maybe there's aliens. Wow, we don't know what the mind is. Wow, consciousness is pretty wild. Well, what do you think it is? No, it has to be this kind of rigorous scientific approach to what reality is and where we come from. And this kind of serious approach to life, I think, is what turns a lot of people off from science itself, which kind of brought, that makes sense to me, absolutely. The scientific paradigm, I don't know if I already made the video I was intending to, but I was going to talk about kind of pop science and, why I can't stand guys like Bill Nye and that other Neil deGrasse Tyson, guys who otherwise are, were pretty decent dudes, just wanted to teach and learn, and then became famous and got all cocky and basically just wanted to spit in everybody's face who believes in something different, including the Flat Earth community, which, coincidentally enough, I was debating on a live cast earlier about that with some of them, and somebody got flustered with the fact that I wasn't disproving their claims or trying to prove that the Earth is a globe, and I said, look, I learned about this idea of the flat Earth, 25 years ago. I looked into it, found it interesting, came to the conclusion that If you want to believe that, you're free to. I have no interest in proving it because of the fact that, and this isn't just flat earth, it's just my example. Religion would be the same way. No matter what kind of evidence you have against something, there's always somebody who's going to dispute that. The evidence is lying. The evidence is flawed. The pictures are faked. History is a lie. Everything's a lie. But all of a sudden, a picture comes up to confirm something somebody wants to believe, or a simple writing in a book, and they believe that that's true. Well, this is true because I was told it's true. Well, but you were just programmed to believe in science by your school. And you can see how frustrating that can be. When a person's like, well, you just believe everything you're told by science. I'm like, well, what else is there? I've had these debates with people over many different issues, and in the end, often people will say, well, I don't really believe anything anyway. I don't know what's true. I'm like, then why are you even sitting here arguing? Why? What brings you to an educational video if you don't have any idea of anything? I mean, you obviously believe in language, right? You're using it. Okay, so you believe that your cell phone will record you when you're making a video, or I'm using a camera in this case. There are certain things we can know, so it's kind of a cop-out to say, well, we just don't know, nobody knows anything. But that's the problem. We get into the discussions, and instead of trying to relate to each other on a certain level, we push each other away. And so it's not just the biggest problem with communication, is the illusion that's taken place. You could replace communication with research, replace it with understanding, change, improvement. The biggest problem in improvement is the illusion that's taken place. The idea that we think we've learned certain things, but really that's the Dunning-Kruger effect in full swing. The less we know, the more we think we know. This has been shown over and over. So you get to a point where the greatest wisdom does lie in knowing you know nothing. But don't be so open-minded that your brain falls out. And so I guess it's what is a worthy argument at all? What is even worth discussing or debating with someone? I mean, politically, it's just a madhouse out there. And, I watched a documentary the other day about the Cambridge Analytica scandal. And this isn't going to be political, It's one thing to have an election with Trump. It's quite another thing when these people have actually, they have changed entire countries, by the propaganda that they put out. I believe it was Trinidad where there was the blacks and then the Indians, basically, and they convinced a lot of the youth on one side not to vote, that voting was not cool. And so they'd have this solidarity that, I'm not going to vote. In the end, the Indians swayed the election towards them by 6% because of the fact that Cambridge Analytica had fooled these people into saying that voting, isn't going to help you. In that case, it probably would have helped them. The point being that there is propaganda and lies, people who are hired to lie to you, people whose entire job is to take your information from Facebook or anywhere else, everything you're purchasing, everything you buy from your Safeway, your Fred Meyer, your club cards, your Kroger cards, your credit cards, your bank account, everything you buy, is just being written down and documented so you can be marketed to, not just stuff, but ideas. And this is why we become so politically divided. It's not that we have really that different of opinions or values. It's just that we have been pushed apart because divide and conquer has always been the tool of the ruling class. And so I feel like that's the problem with communication right now. The idea that we think that we're communicating, that maybe not that we think that we're communicating, but it's like we've fucking given up on even talking about anything. One thing I've noticed about when people divide too far is they start creating pet names for each other. And to give you an example, this can be from the left who are calling the others on the Trump supporters the deplorables. That doesn't solve anything any more than the Trump supporters calling everybody else snowflakes. But let's just take it to a completely different realm, back into the flat earth, let's say, and people are calling each other globetards or globe zombies or whatever. There's these little catchphrases, and when catchphrases form around ideas, it just becomes kind of a shouting match. So you step back and say, wait a minute, what do I really want to know, and what is even worth knowing, and why do I even care? A lot of folks don't want to argue about things. Good. That's probably a good thing. If they don't want to debate something, it's probably not worth debating. But it doesn't mean that arguments are a waste of time. I think that that's a misunderstanding, and something when I was a little younger I thought, well, it's not worth arguing. But I've always been the type to argue my point. So what is a worthy argument? I would say there's very few simple basic things. It's worth arguing against damaging behaviors, whether that's to yourself or to others, but that's in the eye of the beholder. It's worth arguing to protect freedoms and rights of individuals, of yourself and of others again. But that's also varies by opinion, subjective. Another worthy argument is to correct lies and to protect the truth. And one might say, well, wait a minute. Well, that's not subjective. The truth is universal. It's not. We've seen now in the world that no matter what truth you have, people will only believe it if they want to believe it. So maybe you have to give people a reason to believe something or believe in something, you know? And so just saying this is the way it is isn't good enough for most people. I mean, but for a lot of people it is good enough, and that's unfortunate too. And what I mean by that is for all those who don't believe anything and believe that we've just constantly been lied to, there are just as many in, say, the scientific community who just believe the old models, the old theories, and they refuse to look outside the box. And they have this kind of, a lot of folks have a win-at-all-cost attitude, and I think that it should be kind of a win-win for all. And this is why science, I guess, not science itself, but rather scientific studies, I feel can teach us a little bit about where we went astray. Like, for example, what is progress? I was going to do a video about particle accelerators and the CERN project in Switzerland, and the failed particle accelerator they were building here in the U.S., and the fact that people want billions of dollars so they can build these particle accelerators so they can find these mysterious quarks and particles, and oh my god, we'll figure out the new particles, and we can figure out what happened in the earliest processes of the Big Bang. And I can't help but think, so fucking what? Who cares? I mean, who really gives a shit about these little particles? Now, a person would say, well, of course, these might help us discover new energy sources. They might help us, say, particle physics might help us to expand as human beings. But as it's shown itself, the study of these quantum realms has been more or less fruitless, except for a few things that have come to fruit through doing physics and experiments. But as far as science being basically philosophy, trying to prove the beginning of the universe through mathematics or anything else, it's not really helping us as individuals. And so, look, I'm not dismissing science. My thought about it, I feel the same way about going to Mars. The fact that we're spending billions of dollars, building these having these ideas of these colonies on other planets and the moon when we can't even take care of our own shit. It's like we burn our own house down and we move on. But it's not that simple. See, Earth will always be the best place to be, regardless. You're not going to be able to terraform Mars and move people up there. I mean, maybe a lot of people would completely disagree with that. They say, oh, we'll be living on Mars, and maybe so, but you're never going to be able to kickstart a planet that fast to where it will be able to sustain human life in a comfortable fashion like the Earth. No matter how bad the Earth gets, it's still our planet. So, the reason why I'm dismissing these large accelerators and all of this, these crazy physics experiments. I mean, there are some done on this, down in Antarctica where they drop, like hundreds of millions of dollars worth of these little balls down into the ice. They drill these holes, and they put up these huge fields of them, kilometers across, just to try to detect neutrinos. So what? Neutrinos may or may not exist, but so what? I don't understand why people are so obsessed with them. And it's because one scientific group gets on this, and they get on this kick, and one day we're going to step back and go, what the hell were we doing with our time? And that's really the big question. It's not about the amount of money that's spent on these things. It's about the time and the minds. Some of the brightest minds in the world are working on some of the most useless shit. And yes, that's my opinion, of course. I'm just a guy making a video on YouTube. What do I know about science? Well, I consider all of us scientists. Anybody who's ever done even the slightest experiment and to see what would happen, I mean, we all contribute to science. Some people who do backyard experiments contribute a hell of a lot more to the scientific world than someone who sits and writes down theories their entire life on paper. It doesn't mean that one's worth more or smarter or anything. The idea is that each person has their individual niche that they fit into. And the sooner we realize that getting along is a much better option than poking at each other, then maybe we can get our minds together to work towards something greater. I mean, imagine if we put our energy that we spend fighting and arguing into something great, like maybe fighting against the right people. You know, not just the globalists or the liberals or the conservatives, but the fucking elite that really, you know, pay their way through this world. The kind of people that can buy their way out of prison, or the kind of people that would never even see a courtroom. The real enemies are the ones who are causing, you know, your wages to stagnate while inflation rises. But that's for another story altogether. I guess that's a long enough video for my return, so I'll talk to you all again, and hope you all have a wonderful day. Take care of yourselves, take care of others, and get along with each other as best we can.